Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're trying to make sense of the UK economy because, honestly, the signals are all over the place. We've got business growth on one side, but household struggles on the other. So, what is really going on? Let's get into it. So, here's the big question. Is the UK economy finally turning a corner? We're looking at three key reports today that, frankly, seem to paint a really confusing picture. You've got businesses feeling pretty optimistic, but that's clashing with some seriously stubborn inflation and a very shaky housing market. Are we actually making progress, or are we just going in circles? Okay, let's start with the good news first.
All right, let's talk about that glimmer of hope. It comes from the latest survey of UK businesses, and honestly, it's showing a surprising sign of strength.
Now, this is the headline number that's got people talking. It's called the Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI. Think of it as a health check for the economy. The key thing to know is that anything over 50 means growth. And at 51.1, the private sector has now been expanding for 6 straight months. It's not, explosive growth, but it's a steady forward march. And if you dig a little deeper, you find the real surprise: manufacturing. I mean, after a pretty brutal year of contraction, factories are actually expanding production again for the first time in 13 months. That is a huge turnaround, and maybe, just maybe, a sign that the industrial heart of the economy is starting to find its feet again.
Okay, so on the business side of things, it's looking up. But here's the problem. That optimism just isn't making its way to the kitchen table. For households, for most of us, the story is still one of struggle.
And that brings us to the official inflation data. This is really where that business optimism crashes right into the hard reality of everyone's monthly budget.
The annual inflation rate? Well, it's stuck. Prices are still climbing at 3.8%, exactly the same as last month. So it hasn't gotten worse, thank goodness, but it's not really getting any better, and it's still nearly doubled the Bank of England's 2% target.
And when you zoom out and look at the international picture, the problem becomes even clearer. The UK's inflation is running way hotter than in major economies, like Germany and the wider EU. So this isn't just a global problem we're all facing, it's a particularly British one right now.
So what on earth is keeping inflation so high? Well, if you look under the hood, you see this kind of tug-of-war happening. The good news is that food price rises are finally starting to slow down. The bad news? Rising costs for fuel and plane tickets are basically canceling that out, keeping the pressure right on everyone's wallet.
Now let's look at another huge part of the UK economy, the housing market, which you'll see adds another layer of caution to this whole mix. Looking at the national picture, asking prices have barely budged. They're down just a tiny 0.1% from a year ago. Now, we normally see this seasonal autumn bounce in the market, but this year, it's just a flat line. That's a really clear sign that the market has stalled out.
But here's the thing. That flat national average is hiding a really stark regional split. In the more expensive southern regions, and that includes London, prices are actually falling. Meanwhile, in the more affordable parts of the rest of the UK, prices have actually continued to rise. It's creating this really clear north-south divide in the health of the market. So, how do we make sense of all this? How do we reconcile these things? You've got a recovering business sector, but you've also got this persistent inflation and a split, stagnant housing market. Why is all of this happening at the same time?
So what connects all these dots? Well, a few common themes run through all three of these reports. There's this pervasive sense of caution, pressure from a weak global economy, and a housing market that's just flooded with choice, which keeps prices down. But there's one single factor that looms larger than all the others. You know what? Just listen to this from S&P Global's chief business economist. It just sums up the whole mood of hesitation perfectly. He says, companies are clearly treading cautiously ahead of the upcoming budget. It really feels like the entire economy is just holding its breath.
And this brings us right to the final crucial point that was mentioned in both the business and the housing reports. It's political and economic uncertainty, and it's all crystallized by the upcoming November budget.
This feeling of, let's just wait and see what happens, is acting as a major drag on any kind of economic momentum. It's putting a pause on big decisions everywhere, from corporate boardrooms that are debating investments, all the way down to families at the kitchen table deciding if now is really the right time to move house.
And so, we're left with this really critical question. All the data shows an economy that is balanced on a knife edge. Will the upcoming budget provide a clear path forward? Or is it just going to create even more uncertainty? The direction the UK takes next could very well be decided in the next few weeks.